by for Wyoming Hookin Huntin Outdoors with your host, Drew Kirby.
Hey, this is Luke Combs.
I am Morgan Wallen.
I'm Riley Green.
I'm Travis Denning.
Hey, I'm Aaron Lewis.
Hey, it's Luke Bryan.
I'm Tim McGraw.
What's up? This is Ian Munsick.
Wyoming Hookin Huntin Outdoors.
It's Wyoming Hookin Huntin Outdoors. I am Drew, your host, and you can catch us on the radio and on demand 24/7 on the radio station's app. Just click the on-demand button. Bringing in game and fish, and Janet, we maybe need to just kick back and do some hibernating. Janet, but we're bringing back Dr. Dan Thompson and talking bears. And Janet, I took a nap yesterday.
Exactly, kind of like what the bears do, which is why we have Dr. Dan Thompson with us, our large carnivore supervisor out of Lander, to kind of talk a little bit about what's going on with the bears. And like us, they're kind of starting to peek their heads out a little bit and notice that the snow is melting.
Always love chatting with Dan. And Dan, we heard earlier this month that there were bears poking their heads out. And is that kind of a normal thing where in March they'll come out?
Yeah, we start to see a few bears coming out in March. It's kind of an ongoing joke that Yellowstone almost every year has to give a report of the first bear out in early March, and then nobody hears about anything for weeks. But, we're pretty used to dealing with having some bears out in northwest Wyoming starting in March in certain areas. And, what we see generally speaking is we see the males come out first. And then females, if they have young in the den, they'll be usually the last to come out. So sometimes not until May. And, bears are unique in that they give birth in the den and they, they have an interesting evolutionary trait where they breed in June, but the egg's not implanted. It's called delayed implantation. It's not implanted until the fall. So they can have all their cubs at the same time. Every female that's pregnant can have their cubs basically at the same time, late January. And it's a neat evolutionary trait that we see with bears. And so because of that, we see those bears that have cubs coming out later, generally speaking, than those males.
How often are these sows having multiple babies at the same time? Is that something that happens often?
Yeah, it's pretty common to see 2 to 3 cubs in a litter for both black bears and grizzly bears. Yep.
It's a little bit, interesting to think about. Do they know that they have triplets, or do they just think they have a big baby?
Part of that delayed implantation, they don't have good enough body condition. They don't have those cubs. And we don't really see it here. Usually we have, all our bears are pretty healthy, but they'll make a den and they have those cubs, but the cubs are really small. They're about a pound when they're born. So they're just little fur balls there at the end of January, and they're fully active nursing when they're born.
So when they're born, is mom still in and out of hibernation, or, what is mom's situation at this point?
Yeah, basically, bears are unique in that they can wake up in an instant, and so they don't go into that deeper state like small mammals do, like a squirrel or something like that. But they do. They're, like you said, in and out. That's a pretty good way to describe it. We've put some cameras on bear dens before, black bear dens, and actually had observed a female coming out and getting some bedding, like from pine trees, for the cubs a couple times, but they can't spend too much time out or they're going to take away their fat reserves.
So one of the things we have here in Wyoming is we have black bears and grizzly bears. Are they the same, or are they different when it comes to their denning practices?
Yes and no. There's a lot of similarities as far as that denning behavior. It's pretty similar. The delayed implantation, timing of birth. The big difference is that grizzly bear young spend an additional full year in the den with the mother. In the fall, as yearlings, the yearlings will go back into the den with the mother and spend an additional year with them. So that's why grizzly bears are a little slower reproductively than black bears. So otherwise, most of those traits are pretty much very similar.
You said grizzlies are a little slower. How about black bears? Will they have a cub every year?
Basically every other year, yeah.
Well, then what about grizzlies?
Grizzly bears are usually every third year.
Okay.
And they don't usually have their first litter till they're 4 or 5 years old.
This time of year, the bears coming out of their den and they've used up all of their reserve fat. What are their actions like when they come out of the den? So like at this point.
Oh, a lot of stretching, I would imagine. It is unique. They don't defecate while they're in the den, so they got their own spring cleaning they got to do when they come out. Based on our telemetry and collar data, there's a kind of a short time period where they're still waking up. Just as you can imagine, really sleepy or hungover or something maybe. There's a little adjustment period before you're fully normal, and so we see that with bears. But then, they start looking for food, and a lot of times they'll look for easy food like a winter kill. And so definitely this winter in certain areas of the state, there's plenty of winter kill for them to be had. And then they just kind of black bears scavenge a lot, and they key in on the fresh green up, the high nutrients in that, and the fresh green up, and follow that as vegetation changes.
You mentioned some parts of the states have had a wild winter. Will that affect the bears coming out? Will they stay in a little longer and try to avoid that?
Yeah, we honestly really haven't seen any dramatic changes in like den emergence based on localized weather. We don't have enough data to suggest that they're going to stay in longer necessarily, but obviously some bears might realize that it's not worth getting up yet that early. But what we will see is if, especially more grizzly bears that den a lot higher, they'll come out basically somewhat regardless of that, and then they'll come down to an area that has food. So while there's might be some individuals that are staying in longer, that the snow and the winter don't really impact that denning chronology. What it does hopefully look like for bears is a really good food sources for this summer. I mean, I'd expect a lot of greenness in areas that have been pretty brown, and so
berry production.
And berry production. I mean, it's easy for us as humans to focus on the negativity, and looking long term, we got to look at this moisture as a benefit to.
Dan, a lot of times we talk about aggressive animals when we talk about bears. It just kind of is one of those things that we always tell people to make sure that, to be prepared and know your surroundings. Is there a time of year that they're more aggressive than others?
Well, bears are not necessarily more aggressive, but they're a lot more active and seeking food at a higher level in the late summer and early fall when we're putting on putting on fat for the winter. And so usually we don't necessarily see as many issues with aggressive encounters with bears. Now we definitely still see potential surprise encounters between bears and humans as more people are recreating, because then those bears are also looking out. We've had some instances of some pretty severe maulings that have occurred with grizzly bears with people that are out and about in the spring, which is kind of new. But again, that's more of a surprise encounter scenario. And we know bears will actively defend their personal areas and their food and their young. And so that's the things we're looking for.
So
but they're not necessarily more aggressive coming out of the den.
Okay. So, but people shouldn't assume that they're still super sleepy and might not be awake for a little while. People just need to always be aware of their surroundings.
They're a wild animal. They're not a zoo, or they're not a pet. They're not things that you see on TV. So, yeah.
Well, and one of the things that you did mention, these bears aren't out to attack people. They're probably just protecting their area, right?
Yeah, the strong majority of those aggressive encounters or human injuries, and even worse, are the result of surprise encounters or those bears acting defensively. Predatory actions from bears are extremely rare.
When folks are out and about, bear country, what should they be carrying with them?
Versus the things I'm going to talk about, the best thing is a good mindset and a good base of knowledge about bears and your surroundings. So we really talk about being aware of your surroundings, but we definitely promote carrying bear spray and knowing how to use it. And that's a really good active deterrent if you're in an aggressive bear encounter. And as I mentioned before, a lot of these scenarios are as the result of a surprise encounter. So basically, you're trying to make your presence known if you're out and about. And if you can do that and not surprise a bear, it greatly reduces your chances of an aggressive encounter.
Talking with Dan Thompson and Janet Millick from Wyoming Game and Fish. And Dan, we talked about, they're just starting to wake up, just starting to get out and move a little bit. What should people do to lower the chances of a bear encounter, say at home?
Bears are smart animals, but they're also very adaptable at finding easy food. I'm not going to call them lazy, but they definitely will. If they can find an easy food source, they will latch onto it and continue to use that food source. And so I think most people in this area and where we have bears are really good about securing their attractants and making sure they don't have things available especially to bring bears in. Sometimes it's just a reminder that, you get the bears are sleeping in the winter, forget about it. And then you got to remember that when you're up in an area that has bears and they're walking around, the main thing you want to do is make sure they don't have anything available that they can get as a food reward, whether it's bird feed, whether it's food left out or garbage. Bears do not discern between garbage and what we consider garbage and what they consider food. So if they can get a food reward from something, they're probably going to come back and seek more of that. And that's one thing that we try to deter is that behavior occurring because it escalates pretty quickly. And then we can end up with a food conditioned bear, which can become dangerous. They become more aggressive. And once they switch to actively seeking out human foods, we really don't have any other options other than lethally removing that bear. And so all these things we talk about are proactive measures people can do to still enjoy the outdoors, but also keep those bears from gaining those food rewards.
If you think about being wildlife and being specifically a bear on Casper Mountain, they're going to take the easiest path they can, right? So the snowmobile trails that maybe people have been using to get into their property or to just be out and about and enjoy the winter, it's going to lead them right to places where they can find those easy food encounters. And so keeping that in mind, if you have shoveled your places, you're just, making a nice path right to your property for them. And there's nothing wrong with that, but just making sure that you do put the dog food away, that you're feeding your dog out on the porch. Those sorts of things are always kind of, easy to forget, but let's keep mindful to help protect ourselves and to keep wildlife wild.
Dan, we've talked a lot about the bears waking up and not getting into people's places that are secure. But if a bear happened to visit a cabin or a house, a home, a ranch in the fall, what's the likelihood of the bear waking up and going right back to that same location?
Yeah, we do see that with bears. Again, once they figure out a way to get food, they will return to that area. Sometimes we'll move a bear if we have to catch it. We don't like to have to catch and deal with bears, but sometimes we have a scenario where we have an attractant that we need to secure. We can actually capture a bear and move it, get the attractant secured, and then the bear comes back and we have electric fence or it's just not there anymore, and they go about their business. That's why we really try to deter them gaining food rewards, especially associated with humans, subdivisions and things like that. That's why it has to be a teamwork approach when it comes to the public, because you can have 10 houses that are in an area. If 9 of them are great, but one of them isn't, the bear is going to key in on that one. And what we see with campers, a lot of times people might be sloppy, or they might even intentionally feed a bear because they think it's cool. They're not the ones that have to deal with it. It's the next people that come there that might be doing everything right. So those are the types of things we're trying to deter, and trying to deter that type of behavior from a bear that becomes food conditioned. And again, there's a wealth of information on our BearWise Wyoming webpage that talks about how to secure your attractants, different scenarios if you live in grizzly bear country, if you recreate, if you're fishing, hunting, anything in those areas, black bear and grizzly bear country. A lot of it's a common sense thing, but just remind ourselves that bears have a very keen sense of smell. They're going to smell things way better than a human can. Not saying we can stop smells from occurring, obviously, right. But if a bear goes somewhere and doesn't get a food reward, then they're going to keep going. And so that's what we're trying to do to deter that.
We talk a lot about making sure that things are secure, and we were just talking about camping, and most camping areas in bear country have bear boxes. It's always important to use those bear boxes, but now they have all these lines of coolers that have those bear latches. Do you have any experience with those, and are they reliable?
Certain coolers that are approved by the Interagency Grizzly Bear Committee that have been tested by black bears and like captive, actually been tested, thrown in there, and the bears could not gain access. Now, we're very leery to not use the term bear proof, basically bear resistant, because bear proof is next to impossible with some grizzly bears, I guess I would say. But make sure to look to see that it has been certified as bear resistant, because it's a difference than somebody just saying it is. But definitely, yeah, use those bear boxes if they're available. And remember that when we say attractants, we're talking anything that has a scent. So toothpaste, shampoo, soap, things like that. Don't keep them in your tent with you, because again, they might not get a food reward, but you don't want them smelling your tent and going to that necessarily.
And obviously having bear spray in a situation like that is a great idea. Do you have recommendations on bear spray that should be used?
So when we're talking about bear spray, it does have to be EPA certified. Basically, that's not something you want to go cheap on. The bear spray is good for 3 to 5 years. Basically, it's up the seals will go bad. But if you're talking $40 to $50 for a can of bear spray, $10 a year is not that much money to have on you. And I mean, I carry it with me anywhere, just because, not for bears, but for anything else that comes at me wildlife wise. And so I'm so used to having it there that it's kind of just what I do when I go out and recreate. It's a good tool to have and have readily available and know how to use it, but it's a good tool to have when you're out and about in the amazing land that we have to offer here in Wyoming.
And Dan, another video that I saw at the BearWise page at wgfd.wyo.gov was about electric fencing and how that really is becoming a popular way to prevent bears, I guess, at home and even out in the field. How effective are the electric fences?
No, usually as long as it's put up properly. Bears do not like getting zapped. And we've really started to employ that in a lot of places, and throughout North America, quite honestly. And so as long as that fence is properly erected, it does a really good job of keeping bears and other wildlife out.
Another tool in your toolbox of preventing interaction with bear and, causing bad things to happen to that bear. Now, you can go Google BearWise Wyoming or go to the wgfd.wyo.gov website, get all the information about bears as we're starting to kind of stir around a little bit and head outside. Those bears are doing the same thing. So be safe, and thanks again, Dan.
Sounds great. Thank you, Drew.
It's always fun talking bears and making sure we're all aware. Brian Woodward from Rocky Mountain Discount Sports is on the way. Big stuff happening at the store. We'll tell you more.
It's Wyoming Hookin Huntin Outdoors.
We're back. Wyoming Hookin Huntin Outdoors. Again, you can go see all of our episodes in the radio station's app and listen back to those and all of the knowledge that we don on you every week, whether it's bears or fishing. Brian, we give it all.
We talk a lot.
And we like it. We like it. Well, here at the store, we did just talk bears with Dan Thompson, but you guys have all the safety stuff that you're going to need if you're heading out on a hike in bear country.
Yeah, we obviously carry most of the different brands of bear spray, including the stuff that's being built here at Defense Technologies right in Casper. So we've got that. They got bear bells, good running shoes.
Yeah.
Firearms to take care of that. Yeah. And, I think we even have a couple of the bear fences, and we brought one of those in because guys that were late fall camping that were doing wall tents, they wanted to put up a perimeter around camp. So I think we even have one of those in stock.
So I mean, obviously it's smart to be bear aware and bear wise, like we were just talking with Dan and Janet. But being prepared is one of the great things that we talk about on this show. And if you were going to choose a firearm to take with you on a hunting trip or just a hiking trip, what would you pick?
Our most popular firearm, especially for the guys that are archery hunting in the fall, the most popular one has been like the Springfield 10 millimeter. It's got a safety on it. It's a high capacity magazine. Most guys are carrying it in a chest pack or some type of a chest holster, so it doesn't get in the way of them, drawing back a bow. And easy access. And those chest holsters, if you're riding a side-by-side or an ATV, you want them to be accessible. So that's probably the one I would carry. We also carry, lots of different versions. We carry Rock Island, we carry some Kimber 1911s, we carry the Glocks. Smith & Wesson has a high-capacity 10-millimeter out now. So there's a lot of different options for you, but the 10-millimeter certainly seems to be the caliber of choice.
And some will, maybe think about a revolver. I know that, my grandpa, when he would always go out, he wanted to have a revolver, felt a little safer with that, I guess. But
yeah, and the 357, has always been pretty popular. But in terms of knockdown power, the 10 millimeter, I think is probably the 41 mag. That's kind of been more of what the guys are really wanting.
Right.
Now, if I was just hiking, during the summer months around Casper, a revolver is going to probably be more than effective and efficient, especially if they run up on a mountain lion or something to that effect. Obviously, we don't have big grizzlies around here,
right.
And most people aren't being attacked by black bears. But in certain parts of the country, the grizzly bears are definitely a feat to be had.
Yeah, right. And I know that there are some black bears that do get some size and ends up being, a concern for people. But, if you go out and, you harvest, maybe you're going turkey hunting this spring. And I know a lot of people, being Easter weekend now, are doing some smoking, and maybe their smoker just, shot out and it's time to get a new one. You guys have got a full supply of those too.
Yeah, we just transitioned all of our ice fishing, section of the store, which, we don't have much ice left anywhere. Yeah. And we converted that to pretty much all of our camping and our Traeger grills. So we've got every single model of Traeger grills, including their new flat top that's real compatible to the Blackstone. Really, really a great unit. A lot of good features on that one. But we've got every one of those models in stock. We've got a lot of them put together and built already, so a person can take those at no extra charge. And if somebody really needed us to, we can certainly deliver for them.
Yeah, and I'll tell you that if you haven't been in to look at the different styles, you've got the one from like the tailgater, you got the prime rib of them all too.
Yeah, there's a couple of really nice Traeger grills out there. I mean, if a guy's looking to build like an outdoor kitchen and like actually build these into their set, the new Timberline series are unbelievable. I mean, they've got stainless steel grill racks. They've got elevated augers that there's no more back burning possibilities on them. Most of the models now have Wi-Fi, which I originally thought that was like, why would I need Wi-Fi? It's just on my back deck.
Right.
But, after you bring a steak into the house and cut into it and you're like, yeah, it's done. Instead of having to go back outside in the cold, you just go to your phone and click a little button and say, turn off my grill. So there's some neat features.
Yeah, and, as you look back at like the very first smokers that came out years and years and years ago and the features that are on these now, boy, it's night and day compared to what they were.
Well, and I tell you, I mean, anyone that's used one of these smokers, I mean, it makes an average guy look like a really good chef.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and one of my favorite things to do is, grab a Papa John's or Papa Murphy's take and bake pizza.
Yeah.
Grab one of those, order it before I leave the store, call my wife, tell her to start the grill, pick up pizza, throw it in there for 10, 15 minutes. And it's got a great flavor to it, and it cooks it perfectly.
I mean, if you had the Wi-Fi, you wouldn't even have to.
I know.
I mean, man. Well, come on in and check that out. And when you're looking at the Traeger that you're looking for, look at the different flavors of seasonings that you have and the wood pellets and all that.
Yeah, there's a new release of Traeger came out with their new summer release, and I think it's a Louisville Slugger pellet, and it's a maple blend.
Yeah,
and that's one of the flavors that they had back in the day of just regular maple, and they've kind of got rid of it for the last 5 years. And so this one, I'm interested to try that one. It looks pretty good. And then there's also another one that actually comes with some seasonings in the bag along with some rub. So I think that's going to be another one. I'm going to have to go buy a brisket from Frank's just to give it a try. Yeah.
Get in here and check them out at Rocky Mountain Discount Sports for all your Traeger needs. Need a new one? You need an upgrade? Get in here and check it out. And also, we're probably done with snow at this time, at least a foreseeable future, and people want to start getting out and taking in the nature. And hiking is really big right now, and you guys have all the trekking poles and all that too.
Yep, we've got the trekking poles, and we've got a good selection of some new Danner boots, hiking boots, so that we've got a pretty good section of trail shoes on that side of things. But trekking poles, I mean, gosh, if you haven't used them, like when you're out there just walking, it makes a big difference.
It sure does. And balance, if you feel off balance, it really does help. And, of course, your packs with water and first aid kits, you can get it all here. Rocky Mountain Discount Sports.
It's Wyoming Hookin and Huntin Outdoors.
And we are back. It's Drew along with Brian Woodward from Rocky Mountain Discount Sports. And Brian, the fishing has been outstanding in places you didn't think fishing would be outstanding in.
Well, it's not that I didn't think that it could be outstanding. It's just never very outstanding for me.
Yeah. We were talking about Alcova, and I've fished it just a few times, and I don't think I've ever had a bite from a fish on Alcova. I've had a lot of fun, but no bites.
Yeah, like I said, we took the boat up there last weekend just to get the boat out and make sure everything was running properly, and we caught a couple trout ourselves. We didn't get into the walleyes, but I've been hearing some really good stories from guys that obviously they know what they're doing. But that's a lake that's awfully close, and it's. If a guy can figure it out, I think it's a good place to go.
What are you using in a situation like that? I mean, normally you go to Glendo, you know exactly what you can use and where you can use it and how deep you need to go to do it. So on somewhere like Alcova that's kind of making you scratch your head sometime, what's the best way to go about it?
It's definitely a learning curve. You're kind of looking for structure, main lake points, water conditions, maybe the water temperature. I would play around with just looking at, cruising the lake and looking at watching your graph and seeing where you're seeing fish, and typically the walleyes, those are going to be the arcs, about that look like the shape of your fingernail. That's going to be those arcs that are going to be towards the bottom of the surface. The flat lines you're going to see usually elevated. Those are going to be trout most of the time, in my opinion. It is kind of hard to determine the difference, between a sucker, which there is a ton of suckers in Alcova, and a walleye. But generally, the walleyes have a little bit more arc to them. So watch your graphs, just like we always say. You start seeing fish them. And you might see them in 17 foot of water, and maybe you start out a little bit deeper, and next time you go into your next point, or where you anticipate some structure, and just fish. Get on the front of your boat and pitch some jigs. And this time of year, the jigs and minnow presentation generally works, in my opinion, the best. Once the water warms up, guys will start pulling worm harnesses and maybe even some crankbaits, some rapalas, that kind of stuff around.
So really, if you are in a place where you're not normally at, finding the fish is probably the hardest thing to do. But then once you find them, you're probably on them pretty good, and most times you go.
Yeah, I mean, they're kind of a creature of habit, I think. They're there for a reason, whether there's bait there or maybe just the way the currents are working, the bait fish around a point or that kind of stuff. And then, of course, this time of year is always kind of tough because we've got some storm fronts coming through. You got to worry about moon phases and that kind of stuff. Yeah. And, sometimes you get out there on a full moon, it's so bright, there's a good chance that they were feeding all night. So really just kind of watch the conditions, and don't be afraid to just get on a shoreline and just start covering shoreline. It might take you all day to cover one side of the lake. It might take you longer than that, but that's the only way you're really truly going to learn. And then, if as you're moving along the shoreline and you see a rock structure or an underwater hump, mark it with your fish finder and mark that spot. And, or if you don't have a fish finder, as you see something that you want, you might have to just triangulate. Hey, I'm off that rock and that tree. I'm this far off the shore. But most people have fish finders anymore that you can just use a waypoint to mark structure to kind of next time you come back fish it a little harder.
And if you don't, I mean, keeping a notebook with you is really, how they used to do it in the old days.
Yeah, and there's still an awful lot of people that still record every fish they catch and what the conditions were and what they were using.
So if you're going to a place that you know fairly well, like a Glendo, where you fish there the majority of the time during the year, not really that big of a problem. But if they start giving you that kind of the slip sometimes, where you go down and you're like, well, what's going on today?
Right.
Obviously, it's a great thing to have those waypoints and all the information that you can have.
Yeah, I mean, Glendo's not a for sure thing. I mean, the conditions change down there on a regular basis, and I've talked to guys that have gone down there and haven't caught a fish, and I've talked to guys that are catching somewhere in the 20 to 30 fish per day. So they're not everywhere, but again, if you sit on that's kind of the advantage of fishing out of a boat as opposed to shore fishing,
right,
is that you can cover a lot more water. And so keep moving until you find them, and and then kind of see what the pattern is, whether it's a certain depth off the shoreline or it's a certain water color, whether it's a water temperature, that all comes into play, and then you have to try to duplicate it somewhere else on the lake.
And then you even switch the method up totally and you start river fishing, then, it's kind of a different deal. The fish move up and down a little more?
Yeah, I mean, we're not fishing walleyes a whole lot in a whole lot of river systems. I mean, there are not, I'm not going to say there's not walleyes in the river, but I kind of attack that the same way. They sometimes they're in the seam of the current, sometimes they're on the outside seam, sometimes they're in the pools off to the side. So, you just got to kind of throw a jig out or do something to figure it out.
Fish.
Just go fish.
Just fish.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not called catching. It's called fishing.
No. And if it didn't work this time, it might work next time, but don't keep repeating the same mistake.
Right. That's right. And those are great lessons to live by right there. If you screw up on something once, don't do it again. Have you heard much about other locations like Boysen or?
I did talk to a guy this morning that his buddy's been out at Boysen and actually doing pretty well out there. Talked to some people that have fished below the Boysen Dam. They had pretty good success with trout and a couple walleyes. Haven't really talked to anybody at DeSmet or that direction. And Glendo, Gray Rocks, I think are fishing okay.
And then, of course, coming up the first part of May, was 11th and 12th. Mm-hmm. It's the first walleye stampede, and then the next one will be in June. And then, where are you wrapping it up this year?
Our championship in August is going to be at Pathfinder.
Okay, so really
bring it back home.
Bring it home. Bring her home, boys. You guys still have openings for the first one?
We do. Yep. We're about halfway filled up right now. Just a little, probably close to 80 boats right now. So looks like it's going to be a good event. A lot of people like to wait last couple weeks to see what the weather conditions are going to be like. And then that one also, a lot of times kids are still in school, so that kind of plays a part with some people. But it's usually that first one's one of my favorite tournaments.
And then also the Walleye Club has the big tournament coming up.
Yeah, we've got the Tough Man coming up, and that Tough Man tournament is April 27th. So they can go to the North Platte Walleyes Unlimited Facebook page, and they can actually scroll through the post there. There's applications on there, or they can send a message, and we'll send them a copy of the application there. Or if they swing by Rocky Mountain Discount Sports, I've got some copies here that we can print up for them as well.
Okay. Well, if you're looking to get out and start getting into the fishing tournaments and get the year rolling, come on by and check them out here at Rocky Mountain Discount Sports. And obviously, you need new gear too. You've got a whole couple of aisles full of it here. So
yeah, we got some pretty cool different fishing stuff. We brought in some docket tackle, and we've also brought in Megabass this year, which some guys have been playing around with those down at Glendo and having some pretty good success with those as well.
Huh, who'd have thunk it?
I know.
Get in here and check it out, Rocky Mountain Discount Sports.
It's Wyoming Hookin and Huntin Outdoors.
Welcome back to Wyoming Hookin and Huntin Outdoors. We appreciate you listening. And as always, you can go to the app and get yourself informed on all of our episodes on demand. As we're making our way through spring, you'll be thinking about summer and camping trips and fishing trips and then fall hunting trips, and you might think about llamas. Pete Matson from Bighorn Pack Llamas is with me. And Pete, you guys are really starting to gear up, aren't you?
We've got a lot going on right now, actually. We donated a trip through BHA to the Meat Eater auction of oddities, which has just gone live in the last couple days. And we donated a drop camp service for a 2-night, 3-day fishing trip. And somebody bid that up to $10,000 already, which is awesome.
Wow.
All of that money goes straight into the Meat Eater Land Access Initiative, which they've decided to send over to our BHA corner crossing case. So the Missouri 4 will be benefiting through that. We've still got substantial court costs for them during this appeal process, and should have another answer sometime in May, they're expecting. So still working through that, but yeah, that's an awesome deal. The auction house of oddities, all that money's going towards it. $10,000.
That's awesome to see it being so busy and people really wanting in on that.
Yeah, and I mean it couldn't be for a better cause, for hunters and anglers in Wyoming. Public access is huge, and so this is a really big piece of that puzzle.
When you donate trips like that, Pete, what all goes into it on your part?
So we're actually donated a drop camp service for this trip. So I will be packing in the llamas, and it just takes the work off of the folks who won the trip. And so I'll be packing the llamas in and setting up camp for them and everything. And then they'll be back there for 3 days catching a whole bunch of fish. And I'll come back in when they're all done, wore out from catching them all, and then pack it back up and head out back to the trailhead. So it's kind of a full service drop camp. They really don't have to do much of anything other than show up to catch some fish.
How much did you say they bumped that up to?
Yeah, the current bid is at $10,000, which is awesome. So our drop camp services are not quite that expensive. So folks can book those throughout the entire summer and not have to pay quite that much. It's not tax deductible as a donation or anything, but you still get to go back there and then enjoy the wilderness and catch some big fish.
Now, if someone doesn't want to, pay $10,000, you still are offering the services.
Correct. Yep. All through the summer, July and August. September and October is our hunting season, so we'll be transitioning into the rentals then. But yeah, the llama walks, the day hikes, and the drop camps are all available June, July, August, depending on the location. And then we've got some other things going on. We've partnered up with a bloomery just west of Casper. It's a really cool venue, outdoor venue. They do a bunch of concerts and other events, and they have a big wildflower garden that they work really hard on. And so we're going to start doing some guided llama walks through the bloomery, some sunset llama walks. So that'll be awesome. Really looking forward to that.
There's a benefit to walking with these llamas. I mean, you have a love for these llamas, and you love talking about the llamas, but people will understand why you fall in love with these llamas if they just come out and go on one of the walks.
Yeah, it's almost instantaneous. Pretty much as soon as you walk up to them and you look them in their big eyes, and they have those big long eyelashes blinking at you, you feel connected almost immediately. And yeah, a lot of folks aren't used to being around bigger animals and livestock, and it's a really good way to introduce folks because they're so calm and so easy to work with and so fun. It takes a lot of the stress and the worry that some people experience leading up to working with animals, and really alleviates all of that. It's all a good time.
When you say that they're calm and easy to work with, is it because they are trained like that, or is that their natural state?
I'd love to say I trained it into them, and we do work on that quite a bit, but it's their natural state. Horses and mules and some of the other livestock that a lot of people work with, that fight or flight response is really strong, and rightfully so. It's in their genetics. The llamas have been domesticated for a long time, 4, 5, 6,000 years potentially down into South America, and then worked with that entire time. And I think maybe that's just come through in some of the genetics all the way up to now, and that they are really calm. Their natural fight or flight is not that strong. If something goes wrong, they'll take a couple steps sideways and reevaluate what's going on, and rather than kick, fight, and run, yeah, they're a lot easier to work with, and really just a calming presence. They're very stoic, so they're really nice to be around.
And I would assume great for kids, especially if a kid's a little skittish.
Yeah, the injury risk is not quite there compared to some of the other animals. They love them because they're woolly. Llamas are real popular with the kids with the book series and everything else going on. And so, yeah, it is really nice to have kids come out, even if they are a little scared or nervous. All of that kind of goes away as soon as, the llamas are eating out of their hands and they get to pet them and hug them. And yeah, so it's really good for kids. In fact, that was one of the big reasons we ended up going with llamas as pack stock, is so I could take the kids out with us.
Oh, that's awesome. So what does this summer have planned out for you? I know that you're offering, like we were talking about, some drop camp stuff. You're also doing the walks and parties, but what's on the schedule now?
Right now, we're kind of in spring training. We're doing a lot of conditioning and working with the llamas after a long but mild winter, which we're very thankful for. So we're kind of getting a head start on everything this year, which is really exciting. So April, we're doing a lot of training. May, a lot of babies will start hitting the ground, and we'll start back up with our breeding program. And that will lead right into June and July and August. And we're hoping to get into the backcountry hopefully by the end of June. But really June, we've got some day hikes and some llama walks scheduled. We have a couple events at the Bloomery. I can't give too much away. You guys will have to stay tuned to their social media pages and everything. They should be announcing some really cool, awesome events that people are definitely going to want to check out, and the llamas will be there with me. And then we've got that meat eater trip at the end of August, and then a couple other trips so far, but we've got pretty good availability for end of July and end of August for some drop camps. And then rentals, September and October. It's really good time to book your rentals now. Next month in May, the draw results for non-residents come out for deer. And so we're expecting to get booked up pretty quickly right after that if they're not already booked up by then. So don't hesitate. If you're interested in renting llamas, reach out, talk to us. We'll get something squared away and get you on the book so you have llamas to use. Right now, there's some availability left in September and some in the end of October. So, yeah, it's going to be a busy but very fun year for us, and we're really excited. And I'm about to announce, actually, I'll announce it here, I guess, and give your listeners a chance to get a head start. We're going to be running a spring break special next week and through the end of April. So if you book any drop camp or rental service, you'll save 10%. If you book a day hike, you'll save 15%. And if you book a llama walk or a packing clinic, you'll save 20%.
Oh, wow. Big time stuff. And, we've talked before, and Pete, we've talked quite a few times about the llamas, and I want to reiterate why it's important that people book these trips, because llamas are a little easier to handle than horses. They don't need as much as horses, and really they can carry just about the same. Yeah, pretty close. So, yeah, they are a lot easier to work with in the sense they're smaller. They're easier to load and pack with. You're not reaching up super high. They're a lot more gentle to be around compared to some other stock. There are some really good horses out there, but generally speaking, the llamas are a lot easier, especially if you're not used to rigging and saddling and everything else like that. The pannier systems are super simple. The saddle systems are super simple. So we just try and make it easy and fun. And the llamas really take a lot of that hard work out of packing with stock out of the equation. And it really makes it a much more fun and enjoyable experience for me and everybody else. But yeah, once you're back there, they don't require near the amount of camp chores to keep them safe and maintained back there in the backcountry. They eat about a tenth of what a horse does. They drink about a tenth of what a horse does. In fact, most of the time when I go out hunting on some of these trips, my personal trips, I'll pack in gallons of water for me and the llama. So I never have to filter any water for 3 or 4 days. And they have water, I have water. So I'll pack it in with me. I don't have to camp next to a water source. So I can go wherever I want to go, wherever the animals are, wherever I want to be. So yeah, it gives a lot more flexibility in camp locations. They can cover 8, 10, 12 miles in a day, and if you're not walking with any weight on your back, I think people are surprised about how far and how fast they can go. So yeah, they're really advantageous to get back in the backcountry, and it really just makes it a lot more fun. Well, I'll tell you that if you want to get in on this spring break special, the spring special that he has, what's the best way to get a hold of you, Pete? Yeah, the best way is
is through either Instagram, Facebook, or our website, bighornpackllamas.com. Like I said, we're taking reservations now. Things are booking up more and more as we get closer to summer, and people are getting excited to get out along with us. So, yeah, make sure you reach out. We'll get you squared away and have fun with the llamas.
Very cool. Pete Mattson from Bighorn Pack Llamas and backcountry hunters and anglers. And you guys got a lot of stuff going on there too. And we'll have to get you back on here and talk specifically about some of the projects that you guys have going on with that too.
Yep. It's season for that. You know, we've got some stuff coming up, and we'll have some answers on the court case in May as well. So yeah, it's that time of year. Things are kicking into full swing, and we're ready for it.
Awesome, Pete. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Drew.
Wyoming Hookin and Huntin Outdoors with Drew Kirby. If you have a question, want to make a comment, or have an idea for a show topic, message us on the My Country mobile app. Wyoming Hookin and Huntin Outdoors.